Welcome to part 3 of Godlesspanther's Satanic Panic. I left off in part 2 discussing the satanic ritual abuse survivors appearing on talk shows during the Satanic Panic era. As I noted in part 2, the evidence provided by these alleged victims was lacking. Talk shows are like tabloids. They're not known for, nor have they ever claimed to be, the pinnacle of journalistic integrity. They are designed to appeal to an audience that desires schlock, and they deliver that schlock. There has always been a segment of any population who will believe what they want to believe despite the dearth of evidence and lack of any legitimate reason to believe it. Within the evangelical Christian subculture, the desire to believe in a conspiratorial network of Satan worshippers is understandable. It validates their paranoid delusions as well as legitimizing some of their favorite biblical fairy tales. The desire to believe such things for people outside that group is much more difficult to explain. One factor is that people tend to believe what they are told. Urban legends are passed by word of mouth by people who usually think they are repeating an actual event. Then the story is almost universally known, and a lot of people accept them as fact. A woman recently told me about how Art Linkletter's daughter jumped out of a window because she was under the influence of LSD and thought she could fly. The fact is that she committed suicide and drugs had nothing to do with it. This happened in 1969, at the time when LSD scare stories were circulating. Most of these stories were fictional. These legends were disseminated as an attempt to dissuade people from trying the drug. Some of the teachers I had in junior high school repeated these tales as if they were fact. One would think that such relics would have vanished by now. No. Not more than a month ago, a middle-aged man stated that women have more ribs than men do. This myth was debunked over 400 years ago. Why would something so ridiculous still be repeated? Because naturally skeptical thinkers are relatively rare in the general population. I'll bring up another example from my own experience. After the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City, the news reported that the attack was carried out by Middle Eastern terrorists. I was at work at the time, and my co-workers expressed their outrage toward those horrible terrorists over there in Iraq or Pakistan or wherever. I questioned it. International terrorists using a large homemade bomb in a truck parked outside a building in Oklahoma City? This sounded wrong to me, and I said so. I said that this had nothing to do with Middle Eastern terrorists and that it was most likely the actions of a couple of dumb redneck kids. I stated that such terrorists would not use large crudely made bomb and that they would not choose Oklahoma City as a target. They would choose New York or Washington, D.C. The co-workers chose to believe the news report on the radio and acted as if I was a nut. The next day, after the information was corrected, I brought the subject up at work and nobody wanted to talk about it. I would never claim to be right every time. Certainly, I have called bullshit on information that turned out to be true. Many times. The stories from the so-called SRA survivors were occasionally met with superstition. Here is a clip from another Oprah episode in which the former satanic cult member is questioned by someone who doesn't believe him. Watch Oprah defend the crackpot.
I was a follower of the Satanist church in Chicago here. On Walpurgis Night, I was the head acolyte for that specific ceremony. And at the end of it, we wound up murdering someone.
What happened in the ritual where someone was murdered, and how were they murdered?
They were stabbed 7 times with knives because
in Chicago.
Yes, it was.
What year?
About 8 years ago. So it was about 80, 81, and the ritual was a witch's Sabbath, and it got out of hand, and the high priest brought out these 7 daggers, and they impaled him in the form of a cross with the 7 daggers.
My first question would be, were you a member of the Church of Satan, a card-carrying member of the Church of Satan?
Yes, sir.
And who was the grotto leader?
I don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Not anymore, no.
Were you prosecuted?
Like I said, I had a nervous breakdown, and I have partial amnesia, specifically about that night.
You remember the event itself?
The only thing I really remember about that night itself is that I walked in, I got my acolyte robes on, and the next thing I remember seeing was this guy laying on the table with 7 daggers sticking out of his chest.
Did you participate in the stabbing of the guy?
I don't remember.
You have made several statements that don't fit with the Church of Satan. For example, there is only one high priest. There is not a local one. We do not have any rituals.
Only one high priest. Is that you?
That for the Church of Satan was Anton LaVey. Now, it has no rituals called a witch's Sabbath, per se. It certainly does not have any ritual murder activities. And it has no title called acolyte at all.
Mm-hmm.
A person who is a first-degree member in the Church of Satan is referred to as a Satanist. And there are no titles such as that at all. Furthermore, I found
So you're telling him he's lying?
I'm telling him he's lying. I'm saying that he has given us statements in great detail concerning events that took place that he has not named a single name, nor is there any record, as far as I'm aware from what he said, that the police investigated.
I do remember several of the names of the people there.
Did you tell them to the police?
Yes, I gave those names to the police, but I refused to name them on national television for 2 reasons. One, they might not like it and come after me again, and that scares the hell out of me.
Don't you think that they already know that you are talking about them here right now?
They may know that they may know that.
Wait a minute. How could they know that? How do they know that? Because they're watching, or because they just sort of feel it?
The same reason that he would.
The guy with the corny eyebrows is Michael Aquino. He was the leader of the Temple of Set. We can see how Oprah and her audience respond to skepticism with hostility. If we do not feel sympathy for the poor victim, we are cold, heartless bastards. Even though the idiot was not able to supply a single piece of evidence for his ridiculous story and did not supply a satisfactory answer to any of the questions, the audience still believed the lying sack of shit. According to the religious tolerance site, Geraldo Rivera had the biggest impact on selling this crap. Between 1987 and 1995, Geraldo made several episodes of his show claiming that there was such a thing as over 1 million satanic cult members committing horrible, violent crimes for the explicit purpose of nothing more than making a fictitious character happy. And these well-organized doers of evil deeds leave not a trace of evidence, because they are so amazingly skilled at covering it up. Many believers claim that the lack of evidence for the existence of satanic ritual abuse was evidence for the existence of satanic ritual abuse. What the fuck was that again? No joke. The lack of evidence for their existence was evidence for their existence. Alright, it's now time to move on to part 4 to talk more about Geraldo as well as some other topics that I need to bring up.